the stuff I've been through with the media, right? Okay, you want to, pull up, embarrassing things that I'm not particularly proud of. That's fine. We can do that. Yep. And if you want to waste the jury's time with that, then you can take the jury off. And at the end of this thing, my favorite joke of this entire process is one of the plaintiff's lawyers, a guy by the name of Michael Block, has been like my primary point of contact on the other side whenever I need to relay a message to the plaintiff's counsel. This is who I talk to. And right before we got started with jury selection, I said, "Hey, Mike, come here." And I said, "Are you ready to lose to the crying Nazi?" And I've just I put that idea in his head. He kind of had a really uncomfortable chuckle as he walked away.
Good.
I want to put that idea in his head that you're going to lose to me. How do you feel about that?
Getting his head. Yeah, they're neurotic.
Over,
Yep.
You know that's going to eat at him. He's not going to get over that for the duration of his career, right? He's going to be like, I lost to the crying Nazi.
This is I Don't Speak German. I'm Jack Graham, he, him, and in this podcast I talk to my friend Daniel Harper, also he, him, who spent years tracking the far right in their safe spaces. In this show we talk about them and about the wider reactionary forces feeding them and feeding off them. Be warned, this is difficult subject matter. Content warnings always apply. Right, and yes, your occasional parasocial fix of me and Daniel is back. If you're anything like me, you need these parasocial relationships that you have with podcasters to make you feel better while you're not doing what you normally do, which is just sitting alone, hunched over, sobbing. Because we live in the era that we live in. I'm joking, of course.
It is the current year, and we are all just working our way through serious depressive episodes, one after another.
Yeah, serious depressive episode. Yeah. Yeah, I was trying to come up with something that would sum up the current moment, and my notebook just reads. So yeah, I think I might have done that before. It sums up a lot of moments recently.
Yeah, but since it's your notebook, I imagine it's surrounded with little heart. You've drawn little hearts around it,
and flowers and bunny rabbits. Yeah, because I'm essentially an optimist. Surprise anybody that knows me.
It actually is funny. I think you and I both have this kind of attitude of both being severely depressed, doomer mentality of the world is fucking ending all the time, but also this dent of optimism of things have been bad, things are going to continue to be bad, but people are basically good, and we're gonna make it through this somehow, one way or another. I don't know if that describes your attitude, but I feel that's me a lot of days,
I'm in this weird position where, I don't see hope, but at the same time, I find hopelessness completely unconvincing. So
right.
Might as well have it,
Feels like a bonus episode. So maybe we should move off of this and,
sure,
do the thing.
Yeah. So this is episode 99.
99. Yeah.
Yes, we're gonna edge for a while before we get to the big one.
Yep.
It's episode 99, and it is a bit belatedly, but we've both had a lot on our plates lately. It is the Sainz v. Kessler verdict episode. Finally,
yes. The Sainz v. Kessler will cover it. We won't cover it in a lot of kind of the intricate detail, but we'll go over and kind of discuss the whole thing and the verdict and sort of the reactions to the verdict in the far right community and kind of what it bodes for the future, I guess, is sort of where we want to go with this. And
sounds good.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. Sainz v. Kessler.
Before we do that, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you specifically have had on your plate lately?
Sure. Well, again, we were going to record this. This is this is 3 weeks late, basically. And we were going to record this even before the verdict was announced, just kind of after closing arguments. And I'm glad we did miss that. But I I got sick, just kind of mildly sick, not too aggressively sick, but I got a little sick and missed our recording schedule. And then the next weekend, Omicron sort of popped up in the news, and I immediately went, well, I need to go get my fucking booster. And that I did the booster and the flu shot at the same time. And let me just say, if you had a response to any of your shots previously, probably best to space those out. I wish I had done so. I mean, I'm glad I got it over with, but boy, I was completely out for 2 days and mostly out for 4. So, and then I lost my job. I lost my day job. Not for anything related to the podcast, but I'm not going to talk about the details, obviously, but this is now my sole source of income, and I am the primary breadwinner in this household. So if you ever were listening to this and thought, maybe let's throw Daniel $1 or $2 a month, that would be very helpful. I did kind of announce this on Twitter, and a lot of people sent me messages of support, and people do want to help out. And when I did see a couple of people kind of raise from like $1 to $3 or $1 to $5, and I try not to pay too much attention to whether it goes up or down, or I try to just kind of keep doing the work and everything. But I do appreciate anything you can give. And to say something when you can work at a place for years and get fired 3 weeks before Christmas, and basically get we can give you your leftover vacation. Gee, if you'd waited till January, I would have gotten all that extra vacation too. Wouldn't have been, could have saved the 3 weeks. But I'm not bitter. It's going to be, we're hoping this is going to be a positive thing, but just hopefully we can put out some extra content. At least I can put out some extra content, because this is now my day job. So hopefully things will be looking up in the future. Anyway, so we'll see what that means. And I don't want to go over and over this, but it is worth just kind of mentioning up top that that's the big thing going on in my life right now. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And staring down the throat of Omicron, I want to emphasize how grateful I am for any and all contributions as well. Right. So, maybe at the moment, if you feel like contributing to one of us, you should probably go to Daniel. But before, just one little stop off before we get to the main subject of the episode, and it's going to be very brief. I just want to, we had a little bit of feedback on Twitter at the IDSG account. Somebody was listening. I'm not going to mention the account, but somebody was listening to our episode, or one of our episodes on James Lindsay and the grievance studies hoax, the so-called grievance studies hoax. And they, I did look for it actually before we started recording, and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if it's been deleted or if it was appended to a tweet other than the one I looked for or whatever, but I couldn't find it. But what they said basically was, I'm listening to this and I can't help but notice that you're bending over backwards to avoid mentioning the fact that what James Lindsay was and the hoax was trying to point out was that people who weren't qualified managed to get fake papers published in peer-reviewed magazines, periodicals, or whatever you say,
journals.
And I didn't journals. That was the word. That's the word. Words. And I didn't respond to it on Twitter, but I wanted to mention it here because we do. We do talk about that.
That was actually the entire point.
The entire point of the episode. Yeah. And maybe just run over it again. We did address it. They were coached in how to get their stuff published. We went over at length about how the peer review process involved them getting notes back on how to change it in order to get it published. They published some essays that were not immediately obviously fake, not as obviously ridiculous as they seemed to claim and assume that they were. One of them was actually a good essay, as was pointed out by us and by Sam Hoadley-Brill.
Yep.
Which only seems ridiculous if you're James Lindsay and you share his assumptions. And they made shit up. And it's easy to fool the peer review process, which isn't designed to spot outright fakery, if you just make up data. So it is the person telling us that we were avoiding the point that is actually missing the point.
Right, because we covered all of that in the original episode.
Exactly.
And so if they had actually listened to it and wanted to respond in good faith, I mean, we could say you didn't cover it in enough detail, although I don't know how much more, we didn't go through every single paper, obviously, but yeah, no, it was very well covered. And I don't know, I get that kind of response and I don't even like bother with it. I'm just like, yeah, well, clearly you didn't bother to listen, or you're just trying to waste my time. So, yeah. So that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, they've actually succeeded in wasting some of our time and yours too, listeners, because I could have just left it alone, but I couldn't. I had to mention this. Anyway, that's done.
We get a lot of that kind of bullshit. I mean, particularly and none, like the Nazis will kind of come at you, will come at me. I don't know what they do to you, but they will come at me.
They don't bother me.
Yeah, they come at me.
I get all the benefits and none of the drawbacks because they don't give a shit about me. It's great.
They come at me and are like, well, why do you think that Eric Stryker is a Nazi, right? Like big caps, like the, all, like this kind of like trolling, like now possible. You need to explain to me exactly why, that he wasn't just joking all those times, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The IDW crowd tends to come with, like, I just don't understand. You need to like find there's nuance that you're missing in all of these conversations. And it's like, fuck you and your nuance sometimes. Like, seriously. Like James Lindsay is a liar and a fraud. And if you want to like play some nuanced game with James Lindsay, like, and Brett Weinstein, very nearly that as well these days. He's only gotten worse. Maybe if you want to go back to like 2018 and talk about, there's some nuance there somewhere, whatever. But like, we tend to focus on stuff where things are very, easy to prove, and I include as much detail as I can to establish the fact of what I'm actually saying out loud. So, yeah. Anyway, that's the kind of correspondence we typically get. When it's when this is kind of like a negative, it just feels like a waste of my time to respond to most of it, honestly. So,
it's a total waste of time, but I just had to do it.
Yeah. Well.
Anyway, and now onto that Andrew Yang tweet with the hying thing about the. No.
Yeah, we're just gonna. That's where this podcast is going. We're just going to talk about Twitter beefs.
We're just gonna litigate Twitter bullshit.
It's Twitter bullshit. The podcast, ironically, probably would do better in terms of
probably
in this podcast. If we just did a live stream 3 times a week and just went through whatever Twitter drama there was at any given time, my God.
Hey, look. If you want to pay me for that, I'll do it.
Don't tempt me, Frodo. Anyway.
Anyway, yes, on to the actual subject of the episode, which, as I say, is finally the end of Sainz v. Kessler. Daniel, go for it.
So yeah, Sainz v. Kessler is over. Got kind of a weird mixed verdict. I figured we might as well just kind of start off and just kind of give the overall summary of what Sainz v. Kessler was, just for anybody who wasn't listening. This is the civil lawsuit relating to the events of August 11th and August 12th, 2017. We sort of covered a bit of this in the Catching Up with Cantwell episode a few episodes back, if you want to go back and look at that. It's funny, I got some messages from people asking, hey, are you going to do anything with Sainz v. Kessler? What are you going to do? It wasn't even that. It was, what are you going to do with Sainz v. Kessler? And I'm kind of like, I don't know. It feels like the thing has been like building for 4 years because, it was originally, filed in late 2017. And then it just sort of like churned along, and like defendants weren't turning in their discovery on time. And then that just churned. And then it was originally going to go to trial in 2020. And then COVID happened and just shut everything down. And then they finally went in late October of 2021 to actually run this trial. And so it felt this very, I don't know, it just, it had been this sort of like rumbling thing in the back of my mind for so long that I didn't even think of it as like an event that I was going to have to like cover. But thankfully, Molly did not feel that way. And the good people at Unicorn Right did not feel that way. And they both produced a number of tweets. They were live tweeting the whole thing and produced some kind of live transcript articles. I've linked all that in the show notes, so you can go and kind of check it out. And I was kind of monitoring these tweets sort of in real time as I could on my lunch breaks and such. I feel like I followed the trial, even though I was not able to listen to very much of it. This is the civil trial relating to the events of Unite the Right. It had a whole bunch of defendants. It's something like 20 named defendants. Although some people got dropped from it early on. We're going to talk about that here in a second. Notably, two of the defendants, Christopher Cantwell and Richard Spencer, ended up defending themselves pro se because they could not afford lawyers. And in civil court, you are not there's no public defender in civil litigation, which is a thing.
Well, I'm interested in the mixed verdict because
Sure.
it was found for the plaintiffs in most respects, but there were two federal charges that
Sure.
the jury didn't actually come to a decision on those. Is that correct?
Yes. So there are, and again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not, I'm going by what I learned over the course of the last few weeks, just kind of furiously Googling and reading other people's Twitter feeds. And I have not found, I went looking to see if there was a lawyer, someone with actual knowledge on this who had really kind of written this up in some concrete way, but I haven't seen, I don't think anybody has actually kind of thought about this in public who has the kind of education that I would like them to have, who is not also deeply invested in the case. So there were 6 indictments of these plaintiffs. And the plaintiffs were by and large people who were actually injured either at the torchlit march on August 11th or in the car attack on August 12th. Although a couple of the defendants were people who were not physically harmed, but suffered, kind of mental anguish and PTSD, et cetera. The 6 counts were, the 5th and 6th counts were completely against James Alex Fields. He's the man who committed the car attack, and this is civil liability for damages that just relating to the car attack itself. It didn't involve any of the other defendants, from what I understand. James Alex Fields has been ordered to pay the plaintiffs $12 million, $6 million on each count. And that is almost half of the $26.2 million that everyone was given to pay kind of overall. The 3rd and 4th counts are state level civil liability charges. All right, so claim 3, sorry, there's a bit of delay there because I had to pull up the jury form here. Claim 3 is a preponderance of the evidence, each element of the Virginia state law civil conspiracy claim. So the basic claim here was that the organizers of Unite the Right engaged in a civil conspiracy to commit violence and to deprive people in the city of Charlottesville or kind of counter protesters of their civil rights, of their right to of their civil rights, and so of
their right to go about their business without there being Nazis all over the place. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the 3rd claim is just, did they prove the civil conspiracy? And then the 4th claim is about racial, religious, or ethnic harassment or violence. The defendants were all found guilty on claims 3 and 4. Pretty obviously. I mean, the plaintiffs distributed a ton of evidence in favor of this. It was really overwhelming. And we can talk about kind of the nature of some of that evidence as we get to it. What they didn't find is the federal claims, which the thing is that the counts 1 and 2 were the Ku Klux Klan Act, what they call the Ku Klux Klan Act, which is, I believe, Section 1985 of the Federal Code, which is essentially the same conspiracy claim to commit racial violence, but on the federal level. And the jury cannot come to a consensus on that claim or claim 2, which was did any of the defendants fail to act to stop the conspiracy once it had begun. And so it's weird that they found guilty on counts 3 and 4, but not on counts 1 and 2.
Yeah.
The people who have kind of commented on this basically kind of go, people with experience in trial law basically kind of go, juries are weird. They do weird things all the time. This is not unexpected. I strongly suspect that because this, the deliberations were going right up to the Thanksgiving holiday here in the U.S., that there might have been some horse trading that went on behind the scenes. Yeah. To my knowledge, no juror has come out. They are not required to be quiet. They can talk about it if they want to, but they're not required to, and their identities have obviously been kept secret. So nobody knows. And nobody knows really anything. Nobody knows any of their identities. And I would not hesitate to tell people not to try to look them up. It's probably best that we do not know their identities. Not that I think anyone on this listening to my voice would do so. But so that's kind of the nature of the claim. So they did not find anyone guilty or anyone liable on counts 1 and 2, but they did find on counts 3 and 4. And then there's $25 million, $26.2 million worth of total damages, something like that. And this is spread between actual compensatory damages, which are actual like medical bills that some of these people have to pay, and kind of lifetime loss of income, et cetera. I mean, some of these injuries, if you look at the trial testimony, some of these injuries are like literally like skulls beaten in sort of, just horrifying injuries. There's a whole lot of that kind of stuff that went on with this stuff. But yeah, mixed verdict. And of course, when you get this kind of like civil case with it, what's always going to be a mixed verdict, what happens? Everybody declares victory. So
exactly.
The plaintiffs look at, the law firm that's running this, it's put out a bunch of press releases of, $26 million. We are very happy that the jury found, held liable these defendants, et cetera, et cetera. And the Nazis are like, well, they didn't find us guilty on the big charges they wanted to find us guilty for, and also like none of us have any money, so there's no way you're going to get that kind of cash out of us. So everybody's declaring victory at this point, which was
all right then. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, everybody's happy, which was always going to be the way, unfortunately. So so that's kind of the end point of all of this is, they spent 4 years in civil litigation. They spent 4 weeks at trial, and everybody's happy or nobody's happy. If the plaintiffs got, emotional closure from this, if the people who were actually injured got closure from it, and if kind of the people of Charlottesville feel better about this, and that makes me feel better, obviously. I know that Susan Bro, who is Heather Heyer's mom, has spoken and said that she was very happy to see that that the trial ended the way it did, that they did not get off scot-free. And encouraged, because there is every possibility that they can refile this lawsuit and go back on counts 1 and 2. So who knows? This will be tied up in more civil litigation for years, most likely, because now the big thing is that everyone has to try to argue down their civil liability. So this is not over by any stretch of the imagination. It's kind of where we land on that.
Yeah, no, it'll never be over. None of it will ever be over. Yeah.
Ever be over. It is worth kind of highlighting that there's a variety of like lawyers who are here for. So the plaintiffs' attorneys are run through this kind of nonprofit organization, Integrity First for America, and this is kind of Roberta Kaplan and et al. Who are now Roberta Kaplan is someone who has a long history in American jurisprudence. Among her other achievements, she successfully argued the gay marriage case in front of the Supreme Court, so great for her. She also defended Andrew Cuomo and Harvey Weinstein against Me Too allegations. So
less good for her.
Less good. And don't worry, we're going to get into some of that here shortly, because guess how the Nazis respond to this. So but the defense attorneys, wide variety here. So you have, I've got a link. I'm not going to read a whole bunch of this because we're already kind of running a little bit. We're not running long, but we've got to kind of get to a lot of stuff today. But I did link to a couple of pieces from Unicorn Riot to describe a couple of the attorneys, one of whom, Josh Smith, is representing Matt Heimbach, Matthew Parrott, and the Traditionalist Workers' Party. He is an open Holocaust denier. It says, when trying to confuse jurors about sociological concepts like in-groups and out-groups, Smith asked Simi, who was the plaintiff's expert witness as to how neo-Nazi groups worked on the internet, if Hillary Clinton was white supremacist. And soon after, he told George Norman Moon that cross-examinations can be conversations with witnesses before sheepishly admitting his scattered tangents were trying to keep it lively for everybody. So, Nazi lawyer just trying to keep it lively.
I'll consider it.
James Kolenich, another one of the attorneys, he is an anti-Semitic far-right Catholic. His motives in the case were simple. My willingness to get involved is to oppose Jewish influence in society. He questioned the accuracy of long-accepted scholarship about the death toll of the Holocaust. You can't call the Jew Holocaust into question, right? Christians really shouldn't fall for that. The Holocaust is the execution, the crucifixion of Christ. The most important event in human history is his resurrection, not this Jewish Holocaust, even if it did happen. So, yeah.
Okay.
Contrasted with these two overt Nazis. I mean, just overt Nazis, right? Is this guy Brian Jones?
I think it's safe to characterize that as overt Nazi. Yeah.
Yes.
If it's not, then I'm really lost. In categorical and definitional terms, I'm at sea. If we can't call that Nazi, then I don't know where I am.
In contrast is Brian Jones, who was the counsel for the League of the South, Michael Hill and Michael Tubbs, who are all members of the League of the South. He's just a local Charlottesville attorney. He's essentially he's an attorney for hire. He's a real lawyer. I mean, just not the
simple country lawyer.
He's just a lawyer, and he was hired and he did his job. And ironically, he appears to be the only lawyer for the defense side to actually call a witness of his own who was not also a member of the defense. They called one of the other members of the League of the South who was not on trial as a kind of a character witness and as a witness to the events of the day. So maybe he's a decent lawyer. Maybe he thought everybody has their day in court. Does not appear to be a Nazi. Certainly did not start talking about Holocaust denial theories on the stand, which some of the other lawyers managed to do. And then you had our two.
It's a low bar to clear, but I guess he cleared it.
Right. I'm willing to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt of it's a job for hire. He figures everybody needs a defense. They paid him. Whatever else you feel about it. There are worse things to do as a lawyer. Anyway,
No, I was just commenting on, what a sad situation it is when you can say he didn't actually deny the Holocaust as, as a positive.
Right.
Worth commenting on,
James Alex Fields had an attorney. His name was David Campbell. And it comes out when you kind of look into his details and you look at some of the legal filings. Somebody kind of dug in and went he works for James Alex Fields' car insurance company. he's literally just trying to reduce the damages so that the car insurance company pays out as little as possible. James Alex Fields did not testify in this trial. He did a deposition and he just kind of admitted guilt and kind of moved on. I mean, it's all this is literally just trying to distance Fields from the conspiracy charges as a way of kind of reducing the cost of the payout that whatever insurance company he works for has to pay. That's literally all he did. And so if you read the trial transcripts, or if you read sort of the rushed reporting from Twitter and from Unicorn Riot, it's literally just he comes up and he says, so did you happen to know my client James Alex Fields before the day of August 12th? And they go, nope. And it's all right, no further questions. And that's it. So and then you have our two pro se defendants, Richard Spencer, Christopher Cantwell, who did their thing for sure. Mm-hmm. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we kind of move on. But I think it's worth noting, and I apologize for the slightly scattershot approach here, but it's worth noting that conspiracy charge in this kind of civil conspiracy litigation, it does not require like if you and I, it doesn't require these sort of like conspiracy as we kind of like colloquially think of a conspiracy, like four people sit down and plan to rob a bank or plan to kill somebody or whatever, conspiracy charges, and rightly or wrongly, often, are ways of sort of like encapsulating a kind of larger web of events of people who were all sort of working for the same goal where a crime was committed. And so if, you and I and a couple other people sat down and started planning a bank robbery, and then while we had a plan for a bank robbery, we're only going to rob the bank, or we're only going to go and give a speech or something, and then during this process, one of our guys goes and robs a bank, if the litigants can prove that that was a foreseeable consequence of the kinds of activity that we were planning, we could definitely all be held responsible for that robbing of the bank. And Cantwell in particular is obsessed with this idea that like we didn't, they all kind of say this, that we didn't sit down and conspire. We didn't plan to go and commit violence, but you're all sitting there on these Discord chats, planning this Unite the Right event, sharing memes of people being run over with cars, talking about the legal liability of, there were in mid-2017 Republican lawmakers who were trying to make it legal to run over protesters who are blocking the streets. They're literally all planning this. They're planning a torchlight march where they're bringing in tiki torches and talking about how they're going to bash Antifa skulls, and then they come and bash people's skulls. This is not, this is not complicated, like the fact that you were also planning to go and give speeches, and the fact that you have this sort of like pan to no, this is all in self-defense is not actually a defense. And that's the only defense any of these people offered in any kind of realistic way. Because once you have that level of evidence, which, by the way, this is something that's kind of been talked about now that the trial is over. The plaintiffs in this case did not find all that evidence for themselves. Anti-fascists found all that evidence. Anti-fascists put all that out there. The reason they have all that is not because of their very clever discovery procedures. The reason they have all that is because anti-fascists like put it all on the internet and said, please do something about this.
Yes.
So, no skin off the nose to the lawyers who are very skilled and did their job, et cetera, et cetera. But it would be nice if there was at least some credit given to the anonymous anti-fascists to like risk life and limb to stand up to this stuff and to gather all this information. But of course, this is completely disreputable kind of behavior. So nobody gets any kind of street cred for any of that kind of stuff. So, all right. So I realize we are this far into this and we have not even started playing clips yet. And hopefully we will, hopefully this will not be too long. But you got your cold open there, which was from a Full House episode called Never Recant Well, and that was we're going to be talking a lot about Full House. We've got a Full House episode coming up sometime in the not too distant future. But
that's full for the listeners. That's Full House, HAUS.
HAUS, yes, and this is the Nazi Dads podcast. I've been on this one for a while, so that's gonna be a fun episode for values of fun that cover I don't speak German anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, within our parameters of the definitions of words. Yeah,
yes. And that was when one of the attorneys who appears to be he has done some kind of corporate law stuff, but got his start doing defense work for indigent clients in the Bronx, basically trying to keep poor black people out of jail and from serving long sentences. So good on you. This is did not work for Harvey Weinstein as far as I know, but Michael Block, who apparently had a bit of a rapport with Cantwell, because Cantwell being in jail, somebody had to basically like call him up and read the legal filings to him or deliver them to him, or, in some other way. And, Block just ends up being kind of the guy who, just ended up with that work. So, and apparently he and Cantwell, had some kind of, they're not,
he got the Cantwell detail.
I'm sure they're not buddies, but at least he was able to, Cantwell spoke fairly fondly of him, and even in some of his legal filings, which is his handwritten legal filings, which is fascinating.
He was the Clarice Starling to Cantwell's Hannibal Lecter.
Well, in one of his, he didn't say this in a legal filing, but on this episode, he says, he's kind of mocking Michael Block. And he says, how's it going to feel when you lose this case to the crying Nazi? And he thinks he really got one over on Michael Block, right?
He's really pleased with himself.
He's really pleased with himself and everybody.
Zinger.
You're right, that zinger. And now he owes $700,000. So we will get to him talking about his latter.
The guy walked away, and Cantwell was thinking, I got him. He's going to be sore from that for ages. Whereas, of course, the guy was thinking, that guy's a fucking nutcase.
Well, and Cantwell
actually thinks he's going to win.
Cantwell's big thing is he's sitting around and talking about what he wants to say is, look, all of these people that were injured that day were sort of like, it was mutual combat. They were Antifa, they were carrying clubs, they were all wearing red bandanas, which is apparently Antifa code. I've never heard of it before, but
right. That reminds me of John Nash deciding that anybody wearing a red tie was a communist.
But they're all Antifa. They're all anti-fascist. You can see all these weapons. And so he's literally kind of going through exhibits. I mean, we've got an audio kind of playing that. Well, here, why don't we just go ahead and play a little bit of this audio here. This is from a So to Speak episode 793. It starts around 14 minutes and 30 seconds, and this is how Cantwell described questioning Elizabeth Sines, the other named plaintiff, who was a law student at the time of United Right, who is now graduated and is now a lawyer. But this is how he described questioning her on the stand. And this is more Cantwell, obviously. But
yeah, some Cantwell action for you.
No, but of course not. I had a lot of fun using plaintiff's exhibits to show them that she was. They don't want to. What's the word? There was somebody got admonished for publicly disparaging the veracity of a witness, and so what I should say is that her words seem to be at odds with the video.
So just to break in here, what he's referring to there is that Jason Kessler, who is the named defendant in the case of Sines v. Kessler, was not in the courtroom at the time. He was monitoring via Zoom and was literally like tweeting and posting on Telegram about the trial as it was happening and defaming various witnesses for the plaintiffs and people who were like actively like injured on the stand. He would then go, well, yeah, this is her being a communist or whatever. He got a severe talking to, and then that stopped for at least a little while. Anyway, that's what Cantwell was referring to there briefly.
And I seem to have gone to excruciating lengths to show this. She said, that she wasn't involved with anybody with Antifa. She said she might have heard about it. She didn't really know. And then none of her friends, definitely none of the people that she was marching with had weapons for sure. And, maybe somebody had helmets, but no goggles and, definitely no baseball bats. And so, let's look at the video that you deleted from Facebook. See what happens when we look at the video that you deleted from Facebook. And sure enough, there's, people in helmets and masks, and it's, by the way, it's a hot summer's day, and they're wearing, this whole, entirely unweather-like getup, and they're carrying baseball bats and clubs and sticks and wearing goggles and helmets, and then they start chanting, anti-fascista. And the chant is everybody's doing it, right? It's like 200 people chanting "Antifascista," and they're walking down the street, and it's like, I'm like, okay, so do you remember this Antifa chant that your friends were doing as you walked down the street in an armed mob? So she has no recollection of this, of course, and so, but that tune, if you've heard that chant before, antifascista, it's a catchy tune, and so it's kind of like dancing, it's kind of dancing while they were chanting, and plaintiff's counsel didn't like that at all, and so on the record in the federal court today, there's objection, Your Honor, because you instruct Mr. Cantwell to stop dancing.
He is very proud of that performance, as you can tell.
He sounds really happy. He sounds like he's really enjoying himself.
He had a blast during this whole procedure. As we said in the previous Cantwell catch-up episode, I mean, he has been the bottom of the barrel, like shit Nazi for a long time now. Like nobody wants to touch him with a 10-foot pole. And then suddenly he gets to come up and do what's essentially the radical agenda live in court. And he's the hero now. He gets to be a top dog. And so he's coming out of this great, ultimately. He's having a great old time. And so
me again.
His whole thing was to sit around and basically like pause the video over and over again. He wasted hours and hours and hours of the court's time, pausing and rewinding and playing in slow motion and arguing. He wanted to play this full 2.5 hour like planning meeting video to indicate there's no conspiracy happening here, despite the fact that we're sitting and conspiring to do this. Yeah,
it's a video of you lot doing what is legally defined as conspiring.
Exactly. At one point, he's playing this video for one of the plaintiffs, and he's saying, "Did you see me hit you? Did you see? Did I do this? Did I hit anybody? Did that person was hitting first?" And he's got this whole like narrative in his head, and then she stops him and says, "Like, hold on, can you go back? Hold on." Did you? I think you might have hit me there.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of moves on. It's like,
so he was trying to pull the old, I've got film of me not doing it routine, and actually the film was of him doing it after all.
Well, and the whole thing is like, no, I didn't hit you. I hit all these other people, right? Which is not exactly going to like give you a lot of credence in front of a jury when you're like, no, I hit that guy. That guy was the one I hit. And I swear, like the greatest moment in the entire trial for me is so Michael Block kind of comes out there, and he's very much I'm going to just ask very straightforward, simple questions, and just burn these guys to the ground, kind of, just getting them to impeach their testimony. It goes on too long in some places. The judge kind of encourages him to hurry up. There's a little bit of that going on, but he finally gets Cantwell on the stand and he starts asking Cantwell questions. And at one point he says, he's got a post that Cantwell, put on his Facebook after Unite the Right. And I haven't been able to find the actual visual of this, but it's apparently like Cantwell has gone on and on kind of talking about, yes, I posted all this stuff. Yes, I said all this anti-Semitic stuff. Yes, I said all that, but it's all First Amendment, didn't conspire. And then finally there's one meme, which is literally of the James Alex Fields car attack. And then with like a caption underneath it. And then Block shows it to him, and Cantwell gets like angry on the stand, and he calls Block a fucking asshole, or words to that effect. Stop being an asshole. At one point, Block asks, did you ever refer to people with an anti-Semitic slur? Did you ever refer to lawyers in this case with slurs? Yes. Did you ever refer to me as a slur? Yes, I did. But the absolute greatest moment, I believe, it's Dylan Hopper. Dylan Hopper, who actually did admit in a deposition before the case to assaulting people and to like plan to assault people ahead of time. Dylan Hopper, I might have a couple of names confused, but I believe it's Dylan Hopper. They have him testify by video. Through his deposition because he wasn't available. He kind of dropped out of the case early on and refused to participate. So he didn't show up, and so he just gets the default judgment against him. He knew better than to even bother to hire an attorney, I suppose.
Yeah.
But Cantwell's whole thing during this whole time is to point out all the people with clubs, all the people that are like. And so the defendants, most of whom suffered brain damage during this process, don't have clear memories of exactly what was on what video, right? And so, there's this person next to you holding a club. Therefore, you are part of this anti-fascist mob, and therefore you were like kind of a legitimate, like you were engaging in violence, et cetera, et cetera. That's the argument that they're trying to make, right?
It sounded from the clip like that was his strategy, was basically to say, well, you're Antifa, aren't you? Ergo, you're bad. And
right.
We can't believe anything you say.
Right. Well, at a certain point, Cantwell is giving testimony, and then Block comes up and he has, one more question. And he says, he has to like get permission from the judge to play a video. So then they're out for 20 minutes and they come back, and I'm sitting there going like, oh, I can't wait for this questioning. This is going to be epic. He has one question and then he just points to somebody on the video and goes, is that Dylan Hopper? The man who just admitted to planning to assault people and unite the right. Is that Dylan Hopper standing right next to you? And Cantwell goes, yes. Yes. I mean, that's the moment in which Cantwell like mocking, how's it gonna feel when you lose this case to the crying Nazi? It's like, cold as ice, but it's great. So
that would certainly burn, if it happened. Of course it didn't.
Right.
It was never going to.
These are professional lawyers with like mounds of evidence. So I would like to part of what I wanted to do in this episode was to go back and start like talking about like we could go through and impeach all of these people, like Richard Spencer on the stand. Maybe we can do like a Science v. Kessler kind of follow up in the future. And once I get the official transcript, and we can kind of go through like what Spencer said he was saying versus what he said back in 2017, and we could do some of that kind of stuff. But I think it's worth noting that Mike Enoch and I think it's just Mike Enoch, Mike Pinovich. I don't think the right stuff was actually on this litigation to begin with, but Mike Enoch was, and he successfully argued his way out of it back in 2018. I'm not sure exactly how he did that, except he was just very litigious and argued a lot and produced a lot of paperwork, and the judge, I guess, bought his bullshit. But if we're talking about like sort of one of the things of the case is like ratification after the fact. And so celebrating the events of the violence that was committed that day immediately afterwards is considered this kind of like ratification of the events. You're not sorry it happened. You're not apologetic. You're not, you're actively, you thought this is where things should go. Right. And by that standard, the Daily Show and Mike Enoch and all those guys were 100% liable for this. And I apologize. There may be some bleeping that we're going to have to do here, but I would like to play the very opening of the very first episode of the Daily Show that aired after Unite the Right. This actually, I believe, was on the Sunday. They were doing it's either Sunday or Monday, but they did 4 episodes that week, which normally at that time they had just kind of opened up the paywall, but they even made them all free for everybody because this is a big thing and they needed to control the narrative, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Context for this clip is that at the time there was a question about the car tag for the James Alex Fields' car, and there was a meme. Somebody had tracked a certain number as the car tag, and that car tag became a meme for like 2 days until it was verified that actually wasn't the number. But the car tag is GVF1111. That was the meme at the time, and that is the title of this episode that aired right after Unite the Right. And there's a reference to it in the audio. So I think it's important to just play a little bit of this. So my apologies for playing some Daily Show Up, but I think it gets to the quick of this matter pretty quickly.
Yeah. Just remember as you listen to this, listeners, the phrase ratification after the event.
Is the Daily Show Up on the Right Stuff Radio.
So yeah, it's a very special Sunday edition, Sunday of the Daily Show Up. Number 179, little after-action report deal going on here.
The Daily Show Up.
From the Right Stuff. What?
Wait, isn't this show actually like CFV 1111 or something like that?
I don't know.
What was the number?
Biz. No one has the dot. Biz.
I was just trying to do that, just minding my own business.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah, we're here. The big Seaville thing finally happened. It felt like the day that was never going to come, and here it was. It came and went. A lot of action out there. Brought to you by Dodge.
Sponsored by Dodge.
Yeah. So.
The undodgeable.
Yeah, definitely sponsored by. Yeah. So Daily Show is CVF 1111 or whatever the hell the license was. I don't know. But, yeah.
That's how they chose to come in after this event. Sponsored by Dodge. I just, like.
Yeah. I mean, comment is superfluous, really.
Right. If there was a Black Lives Matter rally where somebody killed a bunch of people or killed and injured a bunch of people, and then we came on, I don't speak German, and started talking about like sponsored by that guy's license plate or whatever, you would call us moral monsters, and you would be right to do so, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Not that we need to demonstrate that the people who run the podcast, The Daily Show, are moral monsters, but they are. And I wanted to play that just to kind of wet your whistle, because oh boy, again, there's probably a multi-part episode just going through all the different people who showed up on the podcast that week, and all the stuff that kind of went into how the alt-right fell from that point. We might do that at some point if there's interest in that. But I really wanted to give you that as context, because 2 episodes later, none other than Chris Cantwell shows up, and this is how he talked about his activities on the day of August 11th when he assaulted people. This is obviously before he went to jail. This is before the crying Nazi video. This is him. There are questions about like some people, like some sheriffs and some cops are looking for him, et cetera, et cetera. But he is a buoyant. And again, if we're going to talk about, ratification after the fact, I think this is again, key evidence of this. And this is by far the longest clip. We may stop it halfway through and do some commentary, but this is about 3 minutes long. So
just keep going and going.
Yeah, we just keep going. We need to talk to Chris though, right? Chris has limited time, so
yeah, I've got to go drive a Huffington Post reporter to suicide after this. So.
There you go. All right, so.
All right. So, what did you want to get off your large and expanded chest?
Yes,
there, Chris?
I don't want to get anything off of it. I just want to smear myself in commie blood and scream. Really,
there you go.
I don't want to put my chest right now.
Theory,
I had so much fun this weekend. It was like the greatest thing ever.
It was a good time.
If I don't end up in prison for this, it's going to be the best thing I ever did.
Well, even if you do end up in prison,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go to prison. That's gonna suck. But when I get out, I'll feel differently. But yeah, it was great.
A lot of your fellow prisoners.
Fucking physically removing Democrats and communists. I'm following Hop off like literally. It's excellent.
I like how I was following the last day or two. You had a lot of public posts on your Facebook feed, and all these little commie scum, all these little worthless faggots coming in like, you're a pussy. It's like you're looking at a picture of a man like belting people in the face because of his, because of political clash, and you're calling him a pussy. It's like
while being drenched in like pepper spray, like saliva and acid and sweat and like every other thing. Like
it's like how
they're calling me a pussy. They've got a picture of me. They've got a picture of me with tears in my eyes because, shockingly enough, that happens when you get sprayed with bear mace in your face.
Yeah, right.
And they're like, "Look at this crying pussy." I'm like, "Yeah, that's after I physically removed no less than 4 of you fucking cockroaches."
Yeah, it's like in self-defense. In
self-defense, of course.
Yes.
Always in self-defense. They've always got to just throw that in there, right? You know?
Yeah.
We did all this in self-defense. Not Cantwell won't say it. Cantwell is actually just going to say, "Yeah, I've already done a number of appearances in which I've verified that this is all in self-defense. So I'm just going to sit here and brag about it now." But I mean, the whole attitude here is, look at us. We kicked ass. We took names. This is great. This is like an amazing thing that we did yesterday. Now, Jesse Dunstan, who is the one of those voices you're hearing there, was not there at Charlottesville that day. He was the one member of this crew who wasn't there. The other kind of 3 main guys of the Daily Show were there that day, including Enoch himself. Let's finish this clip because this is Cantwell describing the violence he enacted that day, and he maintains this story for years. Like this is basically 2 days after the event. This is the story he tells, and he maintains it all the way up to the present day. So this is the narrative that Cantwell is going to give you. So.
Clarified this on other mediums, which is why I feel comfortable letting it fly. But yes, I will state unequivocally right here that the picture of me, there's a picture that is right now my Facebook cover profile photo. It's of me pepper spraying a guy. That stupid commie asshole had already hit at least 2 of our guys and you can see in the picture that he's moving towards me. That guy was about to attack me. And pepper spraying him was the least damage that I could have done to him. And if he had kept on coming after I'd have sprayed him, then I'd have knocked his stupid commie teeth out. And and the mace was the least damaging thing that I could have done to him. And then having used up the mace in that, I went and I jumped on top of these assholes who had wolf-packed our guy and had him on the ground. And I started tearing some fat bastard's back of his head apart. And then when he was out of the way, I knocked over somebody who was kicking one of our guys. And then I saw some stupid bitch, a woman with a fucking expandable baton. And even at that, I still tried to be chivalrous. And instead of fucking breaking her stupid twat neck, I tackled her. And that's when I got fucking bear maced.
God, sounds like a pussy to me.
And yeah, wow, what a fucking faggot.
What a pussy.
Get some balls.
Only 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a pussy to me too.
Yeah, actually, surrounding with 700 Nazi friends with tiki torches, 20 students. Even if one of them did happen to have a collapsible baton on that day, and swarming and attacking them. Yeah, that actually does sound like the act of a pussy, regardless of how many of them you took down that night. Yeah.
Even in his bullshit bravado version of events, it sounds like a cowardice to me. Yeah,
absolutely. These men are utterly cowards. They just it's terrifying. Yeah. So I'm sure you're now wondering, what's been the response of the other Nazis to this trial? How have other Nazis been covering it? So Trey Garrison over at National Justice, it's National-Justice. This is Eric Stryker's thing. Trey Garrison kind of goes by the moniker Spectre. He has for years, but he was doxxed a few years ago by the SPLC, by Mike Hayden before he joined the SPLC. So when he was at Newsweek. But he has been doxxed for a number of years, and now he's just kind of going by his real name. He was a real journalist in Texas for a number of years, and had covered every day of the trial for what's euphemistically called the national hyphen among the Nazis, because when Eric Stryker set it up, he used the national-justice.com. They think it's very funny to call it that. So we have had some coverage there, and it's obviously completely biased in the Nazis' direction, and talking about how terrible the plaintiffs were, and how terrible the lawyering was, and just how Jewish the whole thing is. That's really the key It comes up over and over again in these conversations. And so,
well, I assumed,
instead of reading any of that to you or even linking to it, because I mean, Google it, it's there. I mean, if you want to see it and you're not a Nazi, I can point you to it, come into my DMs or whatever. But instead, I thought I would play you a clip from Fascination. And this is another TRS show, kind of related to the National Justice Party. We will be doing a lot more coverage of these guys. We'll get right back into them because the NJP is doing some real bullshit lately, and I think it's worth covering. But this is Warren Balog, who we discussed previously when we were discussing the National Party. There will be a whole episode on Warren Balog and his lovely, you can have my the air quotes here, his lovely wife, Emily Yukis. There will be probably a two-parter about those two here coming up soon. But Warren Balog is now replaced later than this, but as of like last week, he has replaced James Alsop as second chair on Fascination, which I find quietly hilarious because James Alsop was always completely outclassed on that show. And Warren Balog is like the only person who can actually like stop Jazz Hands McFeels, who's the main host of that show, from just like talking over everyone else. Anyway, just a little aesthetic criticism there. But it's pretty obvious when Warren Balog sat in for that a couple of times that he was going to be the new co-host. But he and Jazz Hands decided to talk about the Science v. Kessler plaintiff attorneys. And this is from Fascination 357. And this is a couple of minutes long. So again, we may dip in here a little bit, but it does kind of tell you, this is the tone of the overall like discussion, and all of these podcasts I've been listening to. This is the tone of how people discuss this. And I just think Warren Balog kind of makes the point clearly, and I want to wet your whistle for the future Balog episodes. So let's get started with this.
Okay, so this is sort of representative then.
It's representative. I mean, it's and it's just meant to sort of get the idea across of like, this is the kind of things that they're saying. I could do a super cut of like pulling in 20 different episodes and kind of give it to you, but this gives you at least a sense. This is very, very standard. The attitude towards how this trial went among the far right.
Right.
It's believable to me that she was the one Gentile because she seems to be the only one of all the.
He's talking about Karen Dunn, who is one of the plaintiff's attorneys, and he was convinced at the beginning of this clip that Karen Dunn was the one Gentile because he didn't think Dunn sounded like a Jewish name, and he saw her as competent. Now, you're going to hear this, but the way this logic works is that the Jews have been, they used to be clever and crafty back in the day, but now they are just nepotistic. And because they are just swarms of nepotism, they no longer have like competence in their chosen fields. And so it makes sense that the one competent person, the one competent attorney was the non-Jew. All of this is completely...
That makes sense.
There's no tether to reality in any of this, of course, as you can imagine, when, these plaintiffs won $26.2 million in damages for the jury. But this gives you, that's the explanation for what you're about to hear.
Okay.
Plaintiffs' attorneys that is actually there based on merit rather than based on tribal nepotism. It's been shocking hearing Roberta Kaplan actually in action. And that Michael Block is, and I've said this many times, but he is cut from the same cloth as a Jared Kushner, the classic young Gen X, ultra-privileged, ultra, connected, nepotistic, ultra ambitious, very high opinion of himself, little Jew boy, little rat Jew boy. And very much of that type that just, they've been born into this power. They've never had to fight for it. They've never had to claw their way up like their, rag picking ancestors. And the arrogance is there, but also the incompetence is there. He screwed up so many of these, what do you call them? The interrogation, the questioning witnesses. There were so many of these cases where Judge Moon had to shut him down for repeatedly playing these gotcha games, trying to impeach people, testing their memory, and this was this.
All right, just breaking in here, like so. They would ask. So the way that these guys, the Nazis, are like pretending this happened was like they would like point out some like minor factual inaccuracy, you know, like you were there for 3 minutes and instead I was here for 5 or something between like the deposition testimony and these are just like minor details. When in fact they were more like Richard Spencer would claim that I only messaged, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me here. I don't have the transcript, but Richard Spencer would claim like, I think I only sent like 3 text messages to Jason Kessler during that time period. And then Block would pull up the cell phone records and the text message records. And do you think is 3 the correct number? I believe it was 3 or 4 or 5 maybe. And then it's like, would the correct number be 87 messages? Which goes to the central claim of the depth of the conspiracy, because if Richard Spencer had only messaged with these guys a couple of times, he could argue, yes, I am just I was an invited speaker. I really didn't have a lot to do with this. My name was on the poster because I was the big celebrity at the time, but he was very obviously much more deeply invested in the planning, even if he was not a quote unquote planner of the events. And of course, he also, ratified after the fact a lot of the events of this, although I don't think he ever celebrated the James Alex Field's car attack, just to be fair to, friend of the pod, Richard Spencer. No, not at all. But just to be clear about that, I do not believe I found any clip of Richard Spencer ratifying after the fact that event, but he definitely ratified the August 11th torch march. And this actually came up at trial. But anyway, that's what Ballag and what all of the Nazis are trying to say about like that Block was completely incompetent. It was just going out there, and Moon really did tell Block to move on a lot. I mean, there was a lot of like kind of consternation there in which the judge felt like Block wasn't taking too much time with this kind of stuff. And who knows what again, I'm not a lawyer. I wasn't there, but they would take any kind of, any time that Moon judged in their favor as like this sign of like the incompetence of the plaintiffs, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But they are definitely diminishing the meaning of the impeachment that Block was able to give to these defendants in these categories. And they will never, ever, ever admit that. They will always pretend it was like minor, differences or whatever. But that's not what was going on. To continue. This is jazz hands, by the way.
To interrupt, because this is always like when Smash Early Life fails, this is where you'll always find what you need. The Rama Day camp in Washington, D.C., which is a Jewish day camp. Brian Netter and Karen Dunn are donors to this, and Netter, that's her husband. Brian Netter is Netter is a very Jewish name, and when you look up Brian Netter, he is just like, you don't even need to smash early life on this guy. So all I needed to do was connect Brian. It's easy to find out who she's married to, and then
do you think she's racially Jewish? Have you seen a picture of her?
They literally go on like this for like over an hour, like talking about how Jewish these people are, and like
these
all
sad,
four
driveling little pricks.
All 4 of the attorneys for the plaintiffs were Jewish, and that just shows how horrible the whole thing is. And like it's always about like he says like the sniveling rat-faced Jew and that kind of stuff. I apologize for even using that language and for playing it already, but it's worth highlighting. Like this is how this is how physical and how vile these people are with this kind of stuff. It's just there's no argument being made here. It's just they're all Jewish, therefore and not even like Jewish weddings or not not practicing Jewish or like how this isn't like a religious difference. These are like ethnic aliens and therefore not fit to be a part of our society, not fit to judge good men like the people who are on trial here. I mean that's the essential logic there.
It's pathetic. It's they've got nothing basically.
And so now I think it's worth talking about the responses of a couple of the people who were found liable after the trial. And don't worry, we are going to get back to Cantwell at the end. We got another clip from a Full House bonus episode. But and you haven't even heard this one yet, Jack, because I found this one after I shared the clips with you last time. And this is another
this is new for me then.
Another friend of the pod, Matthew Heimbach, the very reformed Matthew Heimbach. He's definitely
right. He's on the left now.
Not a Nazi anymore. He's got a new show. It's called National Bolshevik Radio. I'm not linking to it, but it's on Odyssey, easy to find. And this is from the November 23rd, 2021 episode. And this is the episode. It came out the day the trial concluded, the day the verdicts came down. So, and this is again kind of how the Nazis are celebrating this victory on their end. Kind of worth highlighting here. And this is, a couple minutes long, but we may kind of dip in and out of this.
Not to cut in, George, but let's remember, Roberta Kaplan has represented Harvey Weinstein.
This is Heimbach.
She has done work for Andrew Cuomo, who, of course, is now dealing with charges, and he lost his position over sexual assault and harassment. And she's represented Wall Street banks. So going back to just the 2008 crash, the same banks that took hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of American homes, right? The true wrecking ball for everyday working class people, that this is an attorney that actually represents those people. She doesn't represent the poor black family that's going to lose their home, right? She doesn't represent the poor Appalachian. She doesn't represent the Hispanic family that is dealing with the banks. She represents the banks. She represents serial abusers. Yeah,
the banks hate fascists, and fascists are bad, so the banks are the resistance. That's all.
Yes, yeah, which is so very tiresome.
Just dipping in here briefly to note that this is very similar language that you get out of a Caleb Maupin, by the way.
Oh yes.
I've been resisting doing that for a long time, but there's definitely a Caleb Maupin episode coming. Let's put it that way. Also,
I don't know if he himself is significant enough, but certainly the phenomenon of Nazbolism, I think, an attendant phenomenon, would be interesting.
I think Maupin. I think you can draw a really straight line between some of these figures. And anyway, I don't know quite how to cover that one yet. So anyway, holding off on that for now. But this emphasis on the banks in general, God, we will just put a pin in that for a future episode. It's there's so much there. I don't want to get sidetracked. I don't want to get distracted from this, but also obviously we're not defending Andrew Cuomo or Harvey Weinstein, who were both defended by Roberta Kaplan and these kind of big name law firms, not to defend the absolutely predatory, awful behavior. Fuck both of those people. I have no love for either of them, obviously. Matthew Heimbach himself was convicted not just of assaulting a protester at a Trump rally in 2016, but tried to strangle his wife and went to prison for that. For a few months. Was engaging in sexual improprieties with a consenting adult for all, there's no allegation otherwise, but also Christopher Cantwell admitted on audio to raping a woman at one point, although he doesn't put it in those terms. He says he came down a woman's throat without her permission, without telling her. She asked him not to. He did it anyway, which is sexual assault by definition. He admits to doing that. At least he claimed to have done it. I believe that he did it. There's no legal validation there, but I believe that that's true.
Certainly, as a matter of character, there'd be nothing to stop him.
Right? No, absolutely not. Richard Spencer. Again, there is no legal case that went for this. I do not want to claim otherwise, but both his ex-wife and I believe his current girlfriend have made allegations that he has been physically abusive to her. And there are text messages between him and his now ex-wife that he actually got excluded from the evidence, in which he wishes that she would kill herself, and then he wanted to kill her, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These people who were in this trial, very many of them, and those are just the ones I know off the top of my head, had very severe, crimes against vulnerable people in their lives.
Oh yeah.
And so for Matt Heimbach to get on his moral high horse to talk about, someone defending Harvey Weinstein, motes and beams, my friend, motes and beams.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's continue with this clip.
A really grand speech on all that, but just the idea that of when you are on the side of the actual banks, not like mom and pa's local credit union in rural Arkansas, but like the banks in New York City that are the most evil sons of bitches. Yeah, when you're literally a Wall Street attorney, and then to whitewash your reputation, it's like, well, we're gonna sue basically fucking everybody that decided to attend a legally permitted event about Confederate statues.
Also, clearly the event was not just about Confederate statues, and that's the other lie that they keep telling over and over again for the last 5 years now, talking about what Unite the Right was about. Oh, it was just about Confederate statues. No, it was about white supremacy and white nationalism and ethno-nationalism. It was about getting everybody on that page, and you were using the statues as the excuse to get you there. Anyway, and everybody who's been paying attention knows it. And when you guys talk amongst yourselves, everybody knows it then too, and everybody knew it in 2017. And guess how I know that? Anyway, so yeah, that's Heimbach, the very much reformed, no longer a Nazi Matt Heimbach, talking on his National Bolshevik Radio program about the trial. Believe me, we could go through. There is so much. I feel like this trial has really kind of brought out the nastiness there. We could go through all of these episodes for hours, and just there's miles and miles of content. But instead, let's talk about Thanksgiving. Well, we're not really going to talk about Thanksgiving. We're going to talk about the Full House Thanksgiving with Cantwell special. And this is a brief phone call that Matthew Q. Gerbert, who is a former State Department official, who is the kind of the lead guy on Full House. Again, we'll do a Full House episode in the future. This is Cantwell's. Nazi dads. This is Cantwell's response to the verdict. And this was, recorded just the day after, the next day after the verdict came down, maybe 2 days after, because it was actually recorded on Thanksgiving Day. And I don't know if I kept it in this clip, but they actually do talk about like what they served in the prison for Thanksgiving, etc. Cantwell is kind of obsessed with like the quality of the prison food. I mean, I get it. If I were in prison, that would be something I would talk about as well. But listening to Cantwell from GL, you listen to him talk a lot about how whether the food was even relatively decent or not. And he usually, he says it's mostly pretty bad, but he's like, oh yeah, apparently they served him a pretty good lunch on Thanksgiving. So that actually, I'm not happy Cantwell got it, but I'm happy that like at least the prison system is not, Cantwell can go fuck himself, but I'm happy that like other prisoners got it,
Sure,
at least that moderate amount of comfort. Yeah, this is where we'll do this, and then we'll kind of wrap up here. So
okay.
We're thankful for your service and your good fight. You got to fight in Charlottesville multiple times, I guess, but the thought occurred that holidays
some more brutal than others.
Yeah, exactly. You were in chemical warfare there, according to some of the legislation. But the thought occurred that being behind bars on holidays is supposedly really tough on guys. So how was today? Give us a little bit of color, what you did, and if you got enough
this
for
ain't
dinner.
So bad. They for lunch they actually gave us like hot turkey and gravy and some stuffing, and the stuffing was actually pretty good. And the guy who was sitting next to me didn't want his stuffing, so I did pretty good at lunch. Dinner was less impressive with bologna sandwiches. You think they'd at least give us turkey sandwiches for dinner, but
sure.
And so really, I'm still basking in the glow of the courtroom, and so it's kind of hard to get me down, honestly. Even in the wake of being told that I owe Antifa $700,000, I feel pretty good about what I did over there.
No, I know it's
kind of hard to get me down.
It's so clear that you're a natural-born fighter, Chris. Because when the verdict had just came down, and you called me, I was worried you were going to be upset that because we all had possibly unrealistic expectations that at least some of you guys were going to get out scot-free, and you said, tell everybody not to worry, they can't garnish my commissary, so far as you know, which is, everybody got a kick out of that.
I love how they open with "Thank you for your service," like he's a fucking Marine back in the war.
They constantly fucking talk this way, and neither of these men has served in any kind of military.
Oh, God.
I mean, a lot of the guys in this movement have, served, but like very few of the leaders have. It's but they always use these like military metaphors. Thank you for your service in Charlottesville. Thank you for beating those commies on that. It's always in that like, in this like completely grandiose, military metaphor bullshit. They do it. It's constant. It's absolutely constant. So aside from the apparently his perfectly fine turkey lunch that he had, he's very happy with how things turned out. He's he's over the moon. He's going to get out of prison about this time next year, I think. And I mean, he may be in a halfway house and before then, but he'll be out under probation in about a year, and he's going to go back to doing exactly what he's going to do. Apparently, there are rumors that the movement's going to try to put together the money to send him to law school. So, Chris Cantwell might be an attorney in a few years.
Well, he's clearly showed a natural aptitude. So
right.
It's the logical next step, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, because he only lost $700,000.
People were watching his performance in the Sines v. Kessler case, and they were like, "Wow, this guy's a natural lawyer,
a fine legal mind."
Yeah,
dancing and shouting, Antifa. No, that's the way you win over. That's how you prove your legal acumen, I suppose.
That's right. Yeah, nitpicking over the memories of somebody that your side left with concussion. Well, you said you weren't wearing goggles and.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's and I think it's worth kind of again ending this episode, and the reason we went through this is because I think it's interesting to kind of point out what they're saying on their side about this, but also there's been a really mixed history over time with particularly civil litigation against these figures. And one of the figures that we discussed to some degree is Tom Metzger. We did a two-parter, kind of a separated two-parter on him. And I think, I have been in the acquaintance of Amanda Rogers, at least on Twitter. She's a Miss Entropy, and she has a background in both sort of kind of ISIS brand terrorism and kind of white nationalist terrorism, and has been thinking a lot about Tom Metzger, and has been writing it and doing a lot of like in-depth research about Metzger. And I'm really looking forward to the papers that she produces on this. But something that I was probably a little bit sanguine about in our episodes on this is that Metzger lost a court case and then sort of like became this kind of puttering TV repairman for the rest of his life. And I don't think that I quite kind of fell into the thing of like the civil case crushed him. The civil case definitely sort of like didn't allow him to do certain things that he probably would have liked to have done in terms of kind of building up the Aryan nation's compound. But he did continue to be active in the movement until the day he died. And he did definitely inspire a number of, kind of quote unquote lone wolf terrorists over the years. But Metzger is definitely someone who continued to be active to the end of his life. And, the civil litigation didn't, it precludes certain kinds of activity, and the lawsuit is definitely, it has an effect, but it's not the end of the line for any of these guys. And the truth of the matter is that none of these guys ever had, none of these guys has money. They're never going to get any of that kind of money out of them, even if they can't kind of draw the thing down, even if they kind of garnish their wages for, the rest of their lives or whatever. I mean, it's a pittance compared to the actual like the actual both the cost of the litigation, and the cost of the medical bills and everything that these plaintiffs have sought, so there is a value to this, and I think that getting this kind of judgment matters. I mean, it does make people less likely to do this exact kind of thing, but we're also seeing an evolution in this process. The National Justice Party and Patriot Front, who are they're very closely intertwined these days. Patriot Front just did a several hundred-man march on the National Mall just a few days ago. And they've learned not to do kind of the big speech thing. They've learned to kind of just march through and do a show of force. They've learned to not advertise themselves so that nobody can impose them, in person at the time. But these movements are still out there. These people, some of these exact people are still out there. And, like Heimbach is going to keep making his stupid, Odyssey show, his stupid podcast. The Daily Show is still going. Cantwell is going to get out. Maybe he goes to law school or maybe he doesn't. I guarantee you he's going to crash and burn with his new friends at like 60 seconds after he's, no longer behind bars and he's not the celebrity anymore. Because that's just the history of what Cantwell does. But
that's just Cantwell. Yeah.
He's going to keep being a toxic piece of shit. He's going to keep being a Nazi for the rest of his life. None of that ends. And that's why, there is this kind of like big question mark about, what's the ultimate value here, and I think that we can take this as a win. We can take this kind of judgment, at least say, this is good that this came out this way and not see this as sort of the end of anything really. It's only one battle in the kind of the never ending war, basically, is kind of where I'm landing on it.
Sure. Yeah, it's an ongoing war of attrition, and every win carries its downsides as well.
Definitely. I mean, not least because, this lawsuit costs tens of millions of dollars, yes, it is. I mean, actually, Heimbach is right. This is a bit of a whitewashing for this giant, super powerful legal firm. That's why they kind of run these cases, because they want this to be part of their, they want this to be the flag they can point to and say, yeah, those are the great things that we do. But also, like, we do a lot of terrible corporate work as well. That's what happens when you're a highly paid lawyer, so yeah, it's all complicated and messy, but these guys are pieces of shit and I'm glad they lost. And actually I would really love to see Roberta Kaplan et al. Put them back to the ringer for another couple of years and try to go after them on those federal charges again. That would be lovely. I think let's keep
absolutely
these guys, so good by me, and we will cover it again when it comes back.
If they go for it again this time it so that the jury is not deliberating just before the Thanksgiving break. That might facilitate matters a bit.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, and there's so much that we didn't even touch on in this lawsuit. I do want to I know we're wrapping up, and I'm ready to wrap up, but there's one thing that I really would like to highlight, and that is that this woman Samantha, I know her last name, but it's public, but I'm not going to say it. But this woman Samantha, who was dating Elliot Klein, who went by Eli Mosley. He was sort of the lieutenant of the alt-right. There's this New York Times visual documentary about him that I'll track down and link to. It turns out he was lying about his military service. He was one of the defendants here who declined to participate. He actually went to jail for a little while because he over contempt of court because he refused to produce some documents, and so it is very difficult to get contempt of court on that. You have to be really, really intransigent for a really long time, but he managed it. But he was
through sheer determination.
He was dating this girl Samantha at the time, and she kind of she starts doing some of the planning for Identity Europa, and she starts kind of doing work and kind of planning stuff, and gets into the movement in this way before Unite the Right. And she was not she didn't testify at the trial. She was out of the jurisdiction. She was out of the 100-mile jurisdiction of when they can call somebody in by the time the trial actually came up. But they had deposed her previously, and they played bits of her deposition. And I mean, she would talk about it. And so after she left the movement, because after Unite the Right, the scales kind of fell from her eyes, and she really kind of saw, who knows what she believes and doesn't believe, but she definitely had some really damning testimony in which she was talking about like Eli Mosley talking about how much he wanted to like kill people and like and this isn't like on a podcast. This isn't, in the middle of, some big rally or anything like that. This is like pillow talk between like Eli Mosley and his girlfriend.
Romantic.
Like they're sitting at night and he's talking about how like when push comes to shove, the time will come when I'm going to have to take command, and that means I'm going to have to kill Richard Spencer. And he would talk about how much he wanted it, how much he hated Jews, and how much he hated black people, and how it's really, really damning testimony when it comes from a romantic partner. Samantha also apparently, was briefly involved with Richard Spencer. Everything that I've heard is that Richard Spencer basically like went on a bit of a carousel of sleeping with every woman in the movement for a while, while he was married. And if you wonder why, his also Nazi wife, his Nazbol wife, who is literally translated Dugan, might have left him. I don't think it was based on his ideological values, if you know what I mean. I think there was a lot more going on, but yeah, no. Apparently, there are a lot of rumors of who he did and did not sleep with, but I believe it's well established that he slept with Samantha. And no love lost between these guys. One of the things that kind of came up in the Twitter threads and in Molly's Twitter threads was this, that it's this a bucket of crabs. I don't know if that metaphor kind of carries across the pond at all. But
I think I get the sense of it. Yeah.
Okay. If you go and if you go crabbing and you catch crabs, you put them all in a bucket, and as a way of, they want to climb out of the bucket and escape the bucket, and they will claw at each other to get out of the bucket, and then they will drag each other down back to the bucket. So this is a kind of a common American metaphor, more so on the East Coast than it is in the rest of the country, but it is a known turn of phrase. They're like, I think people are going to start making T-shirts about this trial. They're like, the bucket of crabs, because whenever these guys get the chance to like depose each other, they just completely fucked with each other the entire time. And they called Richard Spencer, got called like a sociopath, and like you were like a serial killer. I think Jason Kessler called him that. I mean, it's just delightful stuff. And we also learned who leaked the audio that Milo had, the terrible rant of Richard Spencer's, in which he's says you people aren't fit to lick my boot and that sort of thing. We found out that's a guy named Dave Riley, who is a kind of an alt-right radio host. So that bit of information didn't come out, but it was admitted to on the stand. So lots of little pertinent details came out. So I'm really looking forward to actually getting the official transcripts and digging into some of these details, because there's a lot that we already know, and I'm really looking forward to the official versions, because I guarantee you there are a lot of juicy bits there for people who are interested in this kind of material. So
if no other value, there is the discovery process, to borrow a phrase.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah,
okay,
that's it.
Great. Okay, thank you. That was interesting. And
sorry, it was a little bit disorganized, just because there was a lot to cover, and we just kind of had to play it by ear a little bit. But episode 100 is coming up, and we've kind of got a bit of a two-parter. It's actually kind of a three-parter with this one. I'm kind of talking about kind of various trials and sort of media representations of trials, and sort of the way the far right is engaging in this stuff. And I wanted to do episode 100 and talk about sort of like the interconnective tissue between sort of like kind of right-wing mainstream spaces and these kind of ultra far right spaces and the overt Nazi spaces, and the way that that's sort of changed over the years. But ultimately, what I really think the best way to demonstrate this is to sort of talk about the Rittenhouse trial and the Waukesha killings. A man ran over a parade and killed a bunch of people in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and the way that these events have been used by these far right spaces. But in order to sort of get into the Waukesha stuff and the Rittenhouse stuff and the ultra far right spaces, I think it's important to talk about the more like normie side of this first. And I think the best way to do that is to talk about the media blitz of Kyle Rittenhouse since he won at trial. And so that's our 100th episode. It's just going to be talking about Kyle Rittenhouse before, during, and after the trial. And I've been doing this. I've been looking at this for about 2 weeks now, and I trust you. It's more fascinating than it sounds. Even if we're not going to get into overtly Nazi stuff, it's definitely worth the discussion. So that's going to be our episode 100. Is more Kyle Rittenhouse. So yay for us.
Oh yeah. What a lovely subject.
They're all lovely subjects, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not really, you can't really be sarcastic about that because this show. So yeah, that'll be along soon enough, and
probably next week. Yep.
Yeah, hopefully.
Definitely before the end of the year. Hopefully we can do 2 more before the end of the year. That's what I'd like to see, but we'll see.
Yeah, we will. We'll get it done. Okay, well, thanks for listening, everybody, and that's great. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
That was I Don't Speak German. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show or found it useful, please spread the word. If you want to contact me, I'm @_Jack_Graham_. Daniel is @Daniel E. Harper, and the show's Twitter is @IDSGpod. If you want to help us make the show and stay 100% editorially independent, we both have Patreons. I Don't Speak German is hosted at idon'tspeakgerman.libsyn.com, and we're also on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Spotify, Stitcher, and we show up in all podcast apps. This show is associated with Eruditorum Press, where you can find more details about it. The music was by Loon the Band.